All right. I got back from Las Vegas. I'm going to keep this here. The Carpenters Training Center is out there. They got a huge training center. But yeah, all week I was doing this worksheets and group projects and whatever, stuff like that. So I thought I'd do it for this class. I basically gave you what you guys have is what I have. This is basically the whole lesson. I'll run through that, and then you guys should have the second thing as a worksheet. I'm hoping I can burn through this, the majority of the lesson in a half an hour, and then we'll have like 10 minutes or so to be going over the worksheets, and then I'll try and summarize it the last couple of minutes. But Steel and Velvet, this is all based off of a book. Some of you have read it, but the guy's name is like Aubrey, which is kind of weird. How it's all about manliness. I will say, disclosure, he's not Baptist. I believe he's like Presbyterian or something. We need more Baptists writing books. Joy always says that. It's hard to find good books written by Baptists. But it's a really good book. Obviously, a lot of biblical principles in it. It's going to be some stuff maybe you might not agree with, but I think it's really good. He dives a lot into biblical roles for men and women and some with children. But Steel and Velvet. All right, all opening. This is the verse. You guys can see it. I love this verse. Doesn't apply a whole lot, but we're men here. I enjoy this time with you guys, and I love this verse. It's in 1 Kings 2, 1 through 2 says, "Now the days of David drew nigh that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth. Be thou strong therefore, and show thyself a man." Such an awesome verse. You got someone old passing on the torch. I've heard people talk about, the hardest thing with having a son is the realization that you're training up your replacement. But here you have David, he's getting old, he's passing on the torch to Solomon, and he's telling him, be strong, show yourself a man. So these are the men classes. We're going to dive into this. I'm going to say there's going to be no comments for the portion of this that I'm kind of running through. We'll get to the worksheet, and there might be some open discussion, but please hold your comments till we run out of time and you can't even say it. So let's get into this. The ideal man as I see him, again, this is plagiarism here. Majority of all this is from the book. Tried to take the parts that I really liked, obviously. So this is basically going to be like 4 lessons, I think. First 2 parts are basically the opening, and then we'll have one on steel and one on velvet. Most of you know what steel is, velvet. You got cotton, silk, nylon, very soft. But the ideal man as I see him, you all have highlighters, right? I gave you all highlighters. I'd recommend, as I'm just running through this, if you see stuff you like, and highlight as we go. Some of this is going to be really good for the younger people. There's good stuff for the older people too, but if you want to highlight it right away, this is basically all highlights for me. Like I said, I picked the parts that I liked, but if there's stuff you want to remember, I recommend just highlighting as we go along. At the end, you got your pencils for the worksheets. But the ideal man, as I see him, is a man of steel and velvet. Let me make sure I got. All right, we're already burning through this here. This term I have taken from Carl Sandburg, who used it to describe Abraham Lincoln. I know of no other expression which so adequately portrays the perfection of manhood. In spite of the millions of men that make up our society, there are few role models from which we can pattern. American men received a stinging insult from a British psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Beerer, how do we say that? Who described them as a bunch of weak-kneed, lily-livered sissies. He originally thought women were at fault, declaring American women to be domineering. Here's his quote: "Before I thought the women wanted to rule the country. I changed that opinion. Women are compelled to take over, not fighting to take over," he continued. "I thought the men who attended some seminars I spoke at with their wives would shoot me for my remarks. But instead, they all agreed with me. It's still the fatherless society. The husbands are not husbands. All the women are crying out for a strong man, and he's just not there." I've talked about this some, but for the younger men, it's a little bit, or a little bit where feminism has crept in or walked right into the Christian realm. But a lot of times you might be nervous, with women. You're trying to get, a lot of them have those feministic characteristics. But I said before, be honest, be bold. You'd be surprised. A lot of women are open to this. They want a man to work. They want, a strong leader in the home. So be honest about it. You'd be surprised. A lot of Christian women, I've heard women, if someone was talking about being a stay-at-home mom, they're like, well, I didn't know that was an even option. These are saved Christian women, and, so sometimes, if you're young, you want to get married, be honest about it. A lot of times you'd be surprised. Women want a strong leader. Moving on. Throughout our society, we find men who are weak, spoiled, pampered, spineless, and lacking in moral, physical, or mental strength. There are men who fail to take their position as head of the household and allowing women and children to push them around, not wishing to accept the responsibility which is rightfully their own. Some blatantly encourage their wives to assume this burden. Many of our so-called jokes center around the wife wearing the pants. Interesting term. On that, it talks about so the husband's blatantly encouraging their wives. I remember talking to a guy at work, and he's talking about his wife. She was bawling because she had her time leave after her baby was up, and she had to go back to work. And he's sitting there telling me, I was telling her, you need to get back to work. I sacrificed. Apparently, she took some schooling for nursing and stuff, and he's like, I sacrificed for you, and you need to get back to work. And I brought up, you wouldn't want her to be a stay-at-home mom? He's like, I like 2 incomes. I was kind of like, man, I mean, she was kind of bawling there, talking about her kid, and now she has to go back to work. And he's there, I sacrificed, for a while, and I like 2 incomes, so I'm like, I don't know. I felt bad for the woman there. She clearly a mother. She wanted to be with her baby, and kind of was insensitive to that. All right, jump back in. Her husband is portrayed as a bungler, clumsy or awkward, however you say that word, inept and incompetent to understand or control his family. To a great extent, men have failed to assume the primary responsibility of providing bread for their tables. Women must come to the rescue. Every day, millions of them leave their households to assist in earning a living. The working mother is more the rule than the exception. I love this, and I'm going to remember this. For you other Sunday school teachers, this is going to be a great one for Mike. A lot of what we're talking about here, you have the people, well, what if, a husband his legs get cut off and he can't take care of his family? I'm just going to use this. Is that the rule or is that the exception? A lot of times we bring up scenarios, and this is the men's class. We're trying to really, get some substance out of these. So a lot of things, I'm going to revert back to this. I know people have different situations. People, aren't perfect and things happen. But ask yourself that. Was that the exception or was that the rule? That'll keep coming up if you're going to ask questions like that. But going back into this. The deterioration and loss of effectiveness in so many homes is in great part a consequence of the neglect resulting from the mother deserting her post, a situation she often laments, remember that woman I was talking about, but can do nothing about. Social problems caused by the lack of manliness. The general lack of manliness is producing far-reaching social problems, you could say spiritual problems. The man who fails to stand up as the head of the family creates trouble in his home. There is a lack of order. The weak-kneed father also creates the dominant mother. For someone must add substance to the family. Someone must determine policies and make decisions. Often urgent demands make it necessary for the wife to step into the leadership role when her husband fails to do so. Such a default in leadership causes great unhappiness and frustration to women. If she must be the man of the family, she isn't free to function as a woman. To devote her time and thought to making a success of her, equally demanding duties as a wife and mother. Her lack of a strong man to preside over her, something she has every right to expect, men, we need to realize that, she has every right to expect this from us, may cause severe emotional reactions. She becomes insecure and sometimes desperate. Children of a recessive father also suffer as innocent victims. They feel insecure due to the lack of firmness and decisiveness. Quick pause, going back, something I forgot to mention, there's a lot of men out there, or push or encourage, really try and push the women out into the workplace, the husbands. I'm thinking of someone, people would know him if I mention the name. Well, 2 people I know of, but I remember them making jokes about, that's where women should be. Yeah, good job putting them out in the workplace. Women should be working. They are divorced now. Not saying, again, that's always going to happen, but I just thought of that. I remember this person talking about that's where they should be, and their marriages crumbled. All right, jumping back in. Growing up in a home where the father doesn't demand obedience, they learn disobedience. They learn that they don't have to yield to authority. When turned out into the world, they are likely to be rebellious and are often troublemakers and delinquents. The man who allows and encourages his wife to work outside her home creates further social problems. She must divide her interests between her work and family. Since her work is usually more demanding, the children and home life suffer. She can't serve two masters. Her neglect at home results in lack of love, attention, and development of the children, and her failure to serve as the understanding wife. I will say this, some of you, we've talked about this, I don't know if someone told me this, but there was a man once who it was his day off work, and his wife got a call from her boss, and he told her, come into work, I need you to come in now. And the man was just kind of had a moment of realization. He's like, man, I don't really like another man telling my wife what to do. You know, it was his day off, he wanted to spend it with his wife. And here, in a sense, there was another man in his wife's life who really she had to submit to in some ways more than her own husband. Kind of a realization for him. He told her, like, call him up and tell him he quit. He didn't like that. Another man had more control over his wife. But a lot of times a job is going to demand more. Homosexuality is another social problem caused by the lack of manliness. When a father fails to portray a strong male image, there is a blurring of roles between mother and father. The distinction between male and female becomes obscure. Boys and girls don't see a clear sex image they can identify with. Because of this, girls don't grow strongly feminine, and boys don't grow strongly masculine. This book was written about 60 years ago, and look at where we're at now. They were saying that then. You got, again, some of this stuff, you're like, man, these are little things, and it's not that big of a deal. But I said this before, how did we get to this point? You know, people are here like, man, people are cutting off body parts so they can try and be another gender. How did we get to this point? Did Satan just, bam? No, he took the little compromises and slowly got us to go here. So a lot of these things you're going to look at, oh, that's a little thing. Well, how did we get here? Satan, clearly he was invested in the little things and got us to a certain point. When men are truly men and women are truly women, this contrast keeps the sexes attracted to one another. Homosexuality is a perversion encouraged when normal heterosexual drives are interfered with. Still, another social ill party caused by the weakness of men is the feminist movement. Boo! We all hear boo! No. Had men been strongly masculine, sensitive to the needs of women, holding them in high regard and appreciation for their contributions in their feminine role, it's unlikely so many of them would have deserted their posts. As it is, many of them feel like second-class citizens, the victims of an oppressive male population who have taken to themselves the jobs that are exciting and fulfilling. Feeling unappreciated and co-signed to a position of minimal value, women have wanted to be liberated from female duties. So we have to take responsibility for that. We can't say that that's the women's fault or it's all the women's fault. When functioning successfully at home, they feel the importance of their work and gain fulfillment doing it. Seeing men fulfill their masculine duties causes women to esteem them as well as themselves. And last, when a man is weak or in any way fails to measure up as a man, women and children lose respect for him. This weakens these important relationships, leading to marriage problems and a gap between parent and child. These serious social problems illustrate the urgent need for action. Truly, there has never been a time of greater urgency when men and women must understand how best they can contribute to the well-being of themselves and society. It appears that if we do not produce a generation of real men immediately, our entire civilization as we know it may be lost. In peril are our most sacred and cherished institutions. You guys can't really see this because of the staple up there. Decisions based... Whoa. Am I in the wrong spot? Institutions. I really hope I didn't mess these up for you guys.
Marriage, family life, freedom of country.
Oh, maybe I just have mine mixed up. I'm hoping your guys' are right. Yes, so I got this page out of order. Marriage, family life, freedom of country, the very foundations of organized society and religion. The need. Our crucial times require men of strong minds, kind hearts, and willing hands. Men who find joy in labor, Men of courage, honor, and strong opinions, clear minds, and high goals. Men who are not afraid of responsibility, men who are dedicated to a task and will surrender their selfish desires and pursuits to a life of service. These are men whose word can be depended on. You think about the men that every day in, day out, they show up at work. They've made some sacrifices, but they've done it for their family. I always kind of have a sympathy or a respect towards men that, they've given their life, they've sacrificed a lot for the family. That's some of them. The jobs aren't easy; they're hard and stressful, but they were the men, and they stepped up, and they needed to take care of their family, and there's respect there and honor. Where did I stop? But along with this fiber of steel, there must be a gentle nature. We need men who can appreciate the beauties of nature, men who love their families with passion and honor, men who adore womanhood, yet dislike weakness and coyness. We need men with compassion, sensitive to the needs of the less fortunate, men who are tender with their wives and children, men who have developed an ability to love. His greatest fulfillment comes in being a man. Now we're going to touch on the steel topic here in more depth. I think we're doing, The steel. The ideal man has the strength, endurance, and temperance of fine steel. He is composed of many sterling qualities. Foremost among them is his willingness to assume masculine burdens, to earn his bread by the sweat of his face. He provides for himself and family with pride as he fulfills this masculine duty. He delights this opportunity to serve and does so enthusiastically. He doesn't face his responsibilities sullenly. It's kind of like bad-tempered, as though there were no escape. He's not looking to others to do what he should be doing. When his problems become difficult, he takes pride in trying to solve them. Only in emergencies does he look to others for solutions. He shoulders his obligations not only for the moral responsibility to do so, but because of the positive masculine feeling he has in doing it. If placed in a position where he cannot function in this important capacity, he is most uncomfortable. His acceptance of this responsibility adds substance to the faith his wife places in him when she leaves the security of her parents' home to make her way with him. She must rely on this sense of duty to provide for her, to shield her from the harshness of the world, and to strengthen her in her new experience. Not only does he assume responsibility for himself and family, but he is also a builder of society, a contributor to the welfare of others. He recognizes the world's urgent needs and, with a sense of social responsibility, contributes his measure to making the world a better place. He is not afraid of responsibility, even when it requires time, toil, and personal sacrifice. All this he does because he feels a moral obligation to others. He helps without complaint. Man of Steel is a masculine man. He's aggressive, determined, decisive, and independent. He's efficient in a man's world, demanding quotas of himself and reaching his objectives. He is competent in a task, fearless and courageous in the face of difficulty, and master of a situation. He has convictions and steadfastly holds to these convictions. He sets high goals which require dedication and patience. He is not afraid of strain and diligence. He rejects softness and timidness. When he has made a decision based on his best judgment, he is unbendable as a piece of steel. Some steel bends, but in pouring concrete, we usually have camber in the beams and they need to bend, but all right. These qualities set him apart from women and the weaker members of his own sex. A man of steel has a sterling character. He remains steadfast to his convictions even under pressure. He's a man of honor and integrity. He is fair, just and honest in his dealings, possessing moral courage and self-dignity, and those diamond traits which make a strong character. He's a master of himself because he has learned to discipline himself. We just had some lessons on discipline. When subject to pressure, he stands firm. In addition to all this, he has achieved a feeling of confidence and peace because of his victory over himself. And physically, the man of steel has a body of strength and skill. That's interesting. The Velvet. We're going to talk about that. How are we doing here? Doing pretty good. The Velvet. The Velvet qualities include a man's gentleness, his tenderness, kindness, generosity, and patience. He is devoted to the care and protection of women and children. He understands and respects their gentle nature and recognizes it is as a complement to his masculinity. He is chivalrous. You want to know why people stop being chivalrous? Because it's so hard to say. I get so tongue-tied trying to say it. No, I'm not opening a door for you. Attentive and respectful to women and has the ability to love with tenderness. He has an enthusiastic and youthful attitude of optimism, which he maintains in spite of increasing years. Humility is also a part of the velvet, subduing his masculine ego as his rough nature is refined. In considering the function of the steel and velvet traits combined, they may be compared to a large, tall building. The steel qualities related to the sturdy framework of steel and concrete. Concrete! Woo, let's go! Which tie the structure steadfastly together and anchors it to its foundation. Without this strong inner framework, the building would not hold nor function under the pressure of its use and outside forces. The velvet relates to the building's decor, its art forms, its landscape, and interior finishing, which adds softness and beauty to the otherwise stark and stern mass of steel and stone.
Is that flooring?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Steel and stone. Where did I leave? Yep. When properly blended, these traits of steel and velvet comprise the ideal man, a masterpiece of creation and the greatest contribution to the well-being of society. When the velvet qualities are added, a masterpiece results. That firmness which otherwise might appear harsh is softened. It is like the large, heavy hands which are trained to play the violin. Such hands have the raw strength to crush the instrument in a moment, but there is no danger of such a thing, as the gentle strokes bring forth beautiful music with a softness and appreciation for the artistic. Both the steel and velvet are necessary to produce a great character. There has never been a truly great man who has not possessed both. All right, we're making pretty good time here. Yep, I'm going to read this next section pretty quick. Men who are steel only. Throughout history, men who have had certain strong steel traits have left their mark on the world, but lacking character, refinement, tenderness, and other velvet qualities, they have not been great men. Such are some of the military geniuses and political leaders as Napoleon, Caesar, Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini. The eminence these men achieved was not done without some merit. It must be recognized that each possessed qualities which inspired confidence and trust, at least initially, by providing forceful leadership, an assurance of protection of the rights and interests of their people, and by doing it in a strong and confident manner, they won support. The virtues of an upright character were largely missing. Also missing were most of the velvet qualities, yet they won support because of strong steel qualities. Although strong steel qualities were sufficient to establish them in power, yet they were insufficient to sustain them for an extended time. The lack of character and the crudeness and coarseness of their lives were self-defeating. Instead of being numbered among the greats, they are classified as enemies to mankind. What about men who are velvet only? I'm sure you know some of them. There are scores of men throughout history who have been velvet men. Although they do not stand out as enemies to society, they do not stand out for anything else. They are non-entities, being remembered for nothing of note. Not being real men, they did not build a better world, nor were they adequate as family leaders. You'll notice there's not really any examples he gives. Yeah. All right, we're going to stop there. Worksheet 1. We're going to give some comments, I think. Ooh, man, 1 minute early. I wanted to get done before half an hour over. So we're going to take these 10 minutes for these worksheets I gave you guys. The last thing is just a cool thing if you want to keep. He's got the ideal man, steel and velvet traits, just if you want to have it. Worksheet 1, examples of steel, examples of velvet, examples of both. I'm looking for people. You got to know some. I want you to write some down. Don't care about your spelling.
People or any people?
Just, yeah, it's all a good point. It can be Bible people, real life people. It can be anyone. Think of someone. If you got a biblical example, I got some biblical examples, some personal examples, some historical people that you think of that are really great. But think of someone who had strong steel qualities, but steel only, yes.
There's a missionary pastor, Barry Hoffman, in South Korea, and he's very strong and passionate and hardcore, preaches the word of God in Korea, but he's been through he's been 20, 30 years in Korea, as a missionary with foreign people.
Yeah.
So the steel quality, I think, is faithfulness or continuing in the faith that he
Yeah.
in
That,
Christ.
yep.
So he's continued faithfulness and consistency. That's
Good.
what I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Would you say he also has, the velvet side of things, or do you just more? You could write it down if you
He
really
does have
notice that
velvet,
steel.
but you were asking for steel, so he
Yeah.
definitely has the velvet where he's very passionate too, though, and really.
Yeah,
very
and I have a
faithful.
section hey Ladybug, if you want to write down examples of both.
Oh, I guess I jumped to both of them.
Yeah, you got the paper there. You should you can write it down. I'll give you guys a few moments, and I'll give you some of what I had. Yeah, in 10 minutes I have to jump into reading the conclusion here. But 10 minutes is a good enough amount of time with you gentlemen. All right, I'll give you guys got some more time. Keep thinking. If anybody would want to borrow the book, I'd be willing to give it out, but I gotta construct other lessons off of it. So, it's a good book though. I'm sure. I think I got it for like $10, $15. But I know Keegan's read it.
Is it just titled that?
It's called The Man of Steel and Velvet.
I'll see.
Yeah.
It's on
It's by like Aubrey and I was gonna look up for an audiobook too. I have the real copy, but I'm trying to get more into audiobooks too. But yeah, it's a good book. It's 300 pages, but it's a fast read, small pages, and it's really good. But it's interesting. I may have blown by it in my fast reading here, but he mentions 3 big things. He mentions is guide, provider, protector. What does that sound? Does that sound familiar? We've been talking about this, the priest, provider, protector. So really, he hits those 3 as being really important. That's kind of interesting. We've kind of been going over that a lot. All right, I'm going to ask on some of you to give me examples. But I'm going to give you examples I thought of. For examples of steel, I thought of right away Rehoboam. Does anybody remember his situation? Dad, pastor, Rehoboam. What? He had the older men who said, hey, if you deal kindly with the people, if you're a servant to them, they'll love you forever, they'll serve you. But he didn't go with their advice. He went with the younger men's advice, the people he grew up with, his friends. What did they say? He's like, your dad was bad cop. You need to be worser cop. You need to be harder on them. And he comes out to the people saying, your father has dealt with you with whips. I'll deal with you with scorpions. He said, I'm going to be. And what happened? It ended up dividing the nation, Israel and Judah. And I thought of him right away. He didn't take the advice of the older ones. He said, I'm going to be, all steel, no velvet. I thought of, this is maybe an interesting one. I don't know if anyone else thought of it. I thought of the brother to the prodigal son. He was clearly faithful to his father. He stuck around. He had the steel qualities. He had wisdom. He stuck with his father. He helped. And sometimes you're like, I can't understand him. He was faithful. Where was his fatted calf and celebration? But he didn't have that velvet, that forgiveness when his brother came back. He didn't have that forgiveness. All right, well, shoot, who wants to go? We got coming up on 7 minutes, but who's got some examples? You don't have to give one of each. If you got one that really sticks out and you want to give an example of, Ange.
I got one for both. First person I always consider, and this isn't a biblical character, but somebody that we know, but I put down Dick Conkle for both.
Yeah.
I think I just talk about the skill, but the fact that such that strong work ethic that he had, and he was such a, working 16-hour days. You'd be sleeping in his car because you'd be plowing snow for 24 hours. But then at the same time, does anyone else know a nicer person than Dick Conkle? Somebody who's more friendly. He'd be witnessing. I talked to guys on the job sites and Dick Conkle, he was the nicest guy.
I talk to guys I work with Gothiers on a few jobs, and I talk to them, but yeah, they'll say that about him. He'd give you the shirt off his back. He was the nicest guy.
But then contrast that with just how, does anyone here know somebody who's a harder working man?
Yeah. And with that, his dad, I know you talk to him a lot. His dad was probably all steel. Dick Conkle's father. I think he didn't have some stories of him being
shot one of his kids in the leg.
That's pretty steel.
Because they weren't working fast enough.
They weren't working fast enough.
Shot him right through the leg.
Oh, yeah. You had another one, Ange?
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah. All right. Then does anyone hit one of these? An example of one or both, or Mike?
Very similar, right? One of both. I got Joe Sturts.
Yeah.
He just exudes masculinity, but then, man, once preach, he's got that sensitive side, and he's just in tune, and he does care, and you can just feel that compassion surrounding him. So.
That's good. Anyone
He's
else?
doing more now than he did, you know, he's still
Yeah.
going. And brother Andy Burrow too, he wants to finish well.
Yeah.
That's cool. Can I do one?
Yeah.
David? For both, I have Jackie Chan.
Leave it to the pastor here.
Well, he can beat up on you, but I saw an interview of some people that have worked with him, and
He
said
said he
he
is
was
a really nice guy.
Yeah.
he was so sensitive to even the children that worked on him,
Yeah.
like the spy that
He
lived
had a
next
kids
door.
show that we watched growing up. I was
The
like,
spy who lived next door.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw in a spiritual person there.
Alright,
Get
good.
some of his gay daughters.
Yeah, that's Steel.
and for Man of Steel, I had Muhammad Ali,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know where if he would be. Though.
All right. David
This
again.
is definitely more personal to my life, but for Steel, I have my dad, and I think he does lack a bit of the Velvet side. And for just Velvet, I have my grandpa.
Yeah, that's good.
Both, very respected men in my life, and my grandpa, he never ran for office, but everybody in town, like, you should run for mayor, like, just people loved him, and he has really strong morals, but there's definitely a lot of things that my dad and him clash on, because my dad's like, you kind of not throw it to the side, but you create a lot, he sees that he creates a lot of exceptions
Yeah.
so that he can show love, and it's a great quality, but there is a lack of that. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting for me where my grandpa's one way, great on one aspect, and then my dad swings to the other side,
Yeah.
and then I could kind of go back and forth where my, Tim, he's swung back and he's a lot more like my grandpa, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah. If you see those good qualities in your parents that build off of them, but
I gotta do one spiritual one.
All right.
Jacob was kind of, the kid that hung around the kitchen, and Mama liked him.
Yeah.
But boy, when he wrestled with God, he wouldn't let go, and
He had him in a full Nelson.
the pre-incarnate, he said, "Let me go." He said, "No, not let you go till you test the hollow of his life." So he really hung in there. Tough.
Yeah. Jonathan.
I think of Barnabas, the New Testament. He was hardcore, went with Paul. I mean, missionary journey, made it happen. Not a wimp by any means. I mean, he preached the gospel, and then he had compassion and grace towards John Mark.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm gonna
That's a
take him
good
on.
one.
He's a mess, but he's come back, and we're gonna take him back.
And Paul was
and
probably a
I'm
little
gonna care
bit.
for him and love for him. And Paul was like,
Yeah.
get him out. He messed up.
I
He's
have
gone.
Paul and Steel.
Yeah.
Ryan, did you have one? I got a few more minutes
I
here.
don't know if it was already mentioned, but I've been reading through the Old Testament, and I thought of Moses right away. God says he was the meekest man in all the world, but he wasn't
Yeah.
afraid. The whole book of Deuteronomy, which I'm in now, he's like, I just read a chapter this morning, he's like, and he starts reminding the Israelites of every time they've sinned.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys made the Lord super angry, and the Lord was gonna destroy you. And he's like, I fasted 40 days and 40 nights and prayed for you guys. And then he's like, he names another wilderness they were in. He's like, you guys there again did wrong. So he wasn't afraid. He had the,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna tell
He
you
really,
what you did wrong.
yeah, definitely refined his steel qualities as it kind of went. Joshua, you got one you want to throw at us?
Well, for both, I have my dad,
Yeah.
which is, like, for me, the perfect example of both.
Yeah.
He is the most masculine man ever, but then he's also not, he's the most loving and, I would say, with Christ-like love.
Yeah.
So that's for both. And then I had an example, I don't really have a lot of people that I can specifically put in steel or velvet.
Yeah.
But there was this one missionary friend that we had that all growing up he was a very steel military, high-ranking military, and then he went to be a missionary.
Yeah.
But kind of to his credit, now through the years he's really learned a good balance as well.
Yeah.
But he was a very steel man.
Yeah. That's good. That's
I
good.
gotta
Go ahead.
just pick on you a little bit because I'm the minister of conflict. You did say your dad was the perfect example. I would have to say Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I would
We
say
do.
that my
That'll
dad was
launch us into the next section. If you guys can see that, obviously we'll talk about Jesus. I have another The second worksheet is basically, I'd like you guys to find verses that define these qualities. We'll be running out of time. I got 5 minutes to rush through and summarize this. If you're thinking, try and listen to what I'm saying. Don't be just focusing on the worksheet. But if you think of verses, to start throwing down what would really be velvet characteristics or steel characteristics. But I'm going to jump into this. Mike mentioned Jesus. It says here, Jesus Christ. Only such men as achieve a balance of steel and velvet stand securely on an unshakable pedestal. At the apex of this relatively small group of individuals stands Jesus Christ, who was the epitome of all that was good and strong. In no area was he lacking. A study of his life reveals an intriguing demonstration of the steel and velvet. He never lost sight of his responsibility to complete the work he was sent to do. He maintained his devotions to it until the end, when he said, "It is finished." He was a leader of men, women, and children, true to his convictions until death. He had the moral courage to introduce ideals and standards which were in conflict with popular teachings of his day. He dedicated his life to the service and salvation of others, lifting people to higher planes of thought and living. He was a builder of society, and he was masculine, possessing courage, determination, fearlessness, decisive judgment, and aggressiveness. He was skilled and masterful. What was he? He was a carpenter. Skilled and masterful in a difficult situation, never afraid to face the hardness of his enemies. Some artists have pictured him as thin, effeminate, and physically weak and shy. He was just the opposite, having a strong body sufficient to drive the money changers from the temple and adequate to perform strenuous masculine tasks. His character was spotless, built on the highest of the moral principles and standards of perfection. He was eager and enthusiastic about life, promising, "I am come that ye may have life, and that ye may have it more abundantly." Yet with all of his strength and courage, there was about him a gentleness that drew to him women and children. Women wept at his feet, and children surrounded him. With all this he had humility. Though he was worshipped as perfect, he denied his goodness, saying, "There is none good but the Father." Yet with this humility there was a self-dignity which commanded respect. As he stood before the judgment of the high courts, he bore his false accusations valiantly and faced the scoffing multitude with superb dignity. In no way does a man need steel and velvet more than in the manner of which, I'm kind of jumping to that, kind of closed the area about Jesus there. Kind of a new thing here. In no way does a man need steel and velvet more than in the manner in which he handles women and children. It is the combination of both strength and gentleness that makes women surrender their lives to a man, giving him unconditional love and devotion. That sums us up. We got 2 minutes here. This end quote's really awesome if you guys want to read it. It's a piece by William Shakespeare. It's a story about a really rugged man who was in a hurry to find a wife. Well, he picked it says that she was young and beautiful, but sharp-tongued, unruly, and defiant. But really, he breaks down her character by being gentle with her. He was a very rough, rugged man, but very sweet, always calling her sweet Kate and such. But he was also then very masculine and basically won her heart over. But at the end, that's a quote by Katrina there that she says, it's pretty cool. I bet every one of you men would, the single men here, you probably would love to have a woman like that. It's really cool. It's kind of like a poem, but if you want to read that, we'll kind of, I guess, we got a minute. I don't, Pastor get mad here, but did anybody have verses they wanted to shout out for the velvet or steel, Mike?
Well, steel, 2 Timothy 4:2, preach the word, be instant in season, out of season.
Yeah.
Preach the word. And then on the velvet side, I thought of Matthew 18:22, forgiveness, 70 times 7.
Yeah, that's good. Real good. And
I got a Psalms for steel, Psalms 14. It says, "There is no other God." It's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Talking to, just very strong. There is nothing else other than our God. And then for the velvet, I just thought of Revelation where he says, how oft would I have gathered you like a hen,
Yeah.
but you would not.
that's
The
good.
Lord, he's how often he wanted to comfort and bring people into him, but because of our stubbornness, we chose not to. So it's really good.
Did I skip a page? It all flowed, right? I didn't skip anything. All right. I just had something. Did anybody else have a verse that they thought of steel or velvet? we're at our closing, so this you're here by your free will. I'm not holding you. Did anybody else have verses for steel or velvet they wanted to mention? I guess I could give some. I had Ephesians 4:32. A lot of us memorized that. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. That's, I think, an awesome one for the velvet side to remember. I had like Jesus saying, "Suffer not the children to come unto Him," for the velvet. I thought of the husbands, love your wives, be not bitter against them. I thought you might say that at the Timothy verse. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and sound mind. But yeah, I don't know if anyone had anyone else. Otherwise, we're pretty much wrapped up. Read that poem at the end. It's pretty good. It's like, oof, man, a woman like that. It's pretty cool.
I saw a video here recently where women talked about that, and it kind of goes along exactly with what you're saying, that you're saying if the women being like, when they found the right man, like, it made it so much easier for them to fall into that feminine spirit.
Yeah.
There I said, one woman was talking, she's like a year ago I was all about that work career life, and I was just, she's like, I was so determined in being that like boss, and she's like, and I met this really strong masculine man, and she's like, and then I just immediately kind of reverted to factory settings. I was just happy to be at home and cook for them, and so they were just talking about that, finding that right man and being able to fall back into that feminine side.
Some of this stuff is good, like for you unmarried. Me and Cherry had lots of these talks too, but he puts it in a way that's really good. It's hard sometimes when you're getting to know a girl, even like I said in the Christian realm, to kind of bring this up. You got to be sensitive to women. Think of a woman's place. She's growing up, she's becoming of age. If God hasn't brought a man in her life, she's kind of got, okay, well, I'm at my parents' house. I'm sure you guys seen this some with maybe your sisters, like, I'm just freeloading here. Should I start looking at a career? It can be hard for them when there's no man in their life. They don't know what God has for them. So, but I'm just saying, don't be afraid to, pose these, I'm fine with being the head of the home. A lot of women, it'll all melt away, and yes, that's what I'm fine with that. So he words it really good. Maybe some of your highlights you can remember. I had these talks with Cherry. The mom raised them all. The sisters held the family up. She went to college for 4 years. She had to help support her younger sisters. And I said, no, no. And it's just for the younger unmarried ones, this could be a help. He words it really good in a way that maybe the women will be a little more help them see it and open to it. But yeah, we're dismissed.